Hey freight agents, are you tired of being held back? Since 2012, Tallgrass Freight has built a proven track record at the top-tier independent freight agent network, and we're just getting started. Here, our agents get the best of both worlds, the freedom to be true entrepreneurs paired with the full support of a company that has their back, uncapped commission, zero territory restrictions, and a world-class back office. At Tallgrass, you're never just a number. You're part of a network that values independence, celebrates success, and invests in your future. Whether you're a solo agent or leading a team, Tallgrass gives you the tools, transparency, and flexibility to grow your business on your terms. No corporate red tape, no micromanaging, just freedom, support, and unlimited potential. To join our team, visit tallgrassfreight.com/podcast. That's tallgrassfreight.com/podcast. Welcome to the Recruiting Stories Podcast, where we celebrate recruiting by exploring the stories of leaders and top performers by digging into their stories and understanding how recruiting has impacted their journey and their success. All right, welcome to the next edition of the Recruiting Stories Podcast. Today, our guest is Danielle Spinelli. Welcome, Danielle.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You are welcome. I'm thrilled to have you. So Danielle is with Descartes MyCarrierPortal, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and she's also a TIA Cargo Theft Task Force member. She's a podcast host. Tell Me Everything. Is that right? That's the name of it, right? Tell me.
All right. Yeah.
Awesome. And then she's an industry vet. She's been in the industry for like over a decade, and resident fraud expert in the industry. And I'm super excited to talk with her about that, because if you're in the industry, you know this is a really big deal, that we're dealing with fraud on a day-to-day basis, and it seems to only be getting worse. But Danielle's going to tell us how to make it not worse, right?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm here for. I think we're hitting a curve where we're like plateauing, so hopefully it won't be as bad for long. We'll see. Government's getting involved, so we'll get into all that. But yeah, I think we're getting a little bit ahead of it. We'll see.
Good. Well, yes, I think the awareness in the past few years feels like it's more than it has ever been in my time in the industry. And I think that's helpful, just to say, wait a minute, because of the awareness, we got to do something about it.
Right.
So,
yep. Awareness and education. That's all we can do. So.
All right. Okay. I want to talk about your background, if that's okay. So I always like to start just with like, how you ended up in the industry. So you are with Descartes now. You weren't always on the MyCarrierPortal fraud prevention side of things. How did you end up in transportation? Did you grow up in it? Did you have a friend who got you into it? Were you recruited into it? Were you dragged kicking and screaming? Tell me about it.
No, my friend actually got me into it. So I worked actually in telecom. And I did that forever. And so basically she was just like, hey, you can make a ton of money in logistics. And I was like, okay. And so pretty much is how I got in it. Little did I know I would not sleep, and it would be nonstop 24 hours a day and all that type of fun stuff. But really just got into the industry so I think I've been in it for about 11 years. But I was first at a brokerage for 1 year. We did postal work, was my main account. And so that postal work, if you've ever done that before, it's like 24 hours a day. If a truck breaks down in the middle of the night, you got to get on the phone in the middle of the night to find another truck. And so that was my whole life. And then during peak season, I wasn't home I worked like 90 hours a week. It was insane. And so after my first peak season, I was like, I can't do this. I'm a mom of 3. And so I'm like, I can't do this. I love logistics, and I love the hustle and bustle of it. And every day was a new adventure, and I loved that. So I knew I wanted to stay in logistics, but I ended up going to a different brokerage, similar size. Of both brokerages are pretty small. But the other one that I went to was mainly copper and electrical wire. So I got to learn a lot about high value freight, and my lanes I was in carrier sales. So I did that from my main lanes were Southeast to Northeast, Southeast to Midwest. So those were my jam. So I got to have my awesome carriers in my pocket and learned how to properly vet people, and then eventually came over on the tech side.
That's super cool. Okay, so it sounds like money was a key motivator for you to get into the industry.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yep.
Okay, exciting. Was it everything you dreamed of the moment you got here, or did it take a little bit to kind of be like, oh, I actually like logistics?
So I think money is what like kind of gets you in it. It's funny because most people that I meet that are in logistics, like they were like waiters or they were in like a car salesman or some sort of like hustle and bustle type of atmosphere beforehand, and then they kind of fell into logistics most of the time. So similar story on my end. I like the speed of everything and like how you're covering, X amount of load per day. Plus you got to manage drivers. Plus you got to manage this and expectations here. And just every day was so different that I really fell in love with that. And then just meeting really great people in the industry. I think it's funny because in logistics, we're kind of our own breed. Like when you go on like a brokerage floor and everyone's like cussing everybody out or, whatever. I think that's a different type of breed of people. And they're just my kind of people where work hard and play harder. So that's kind of awesome. Why I fell into it and fell in love with it.
I always tell people it's like a really fun nexus between like blue collar and white collar.
Yes.
And because it's like on one hand, you might be talking to a driver. You guys might be like, having a very like visceral conversation. On the other hand, hey, I'm talking to like the vice president of procurement over here, right? It's very white collar, and so like you have to put those two together. And there's not, there are other industries, but it
not
makes
quite like ours. Not as quite as fast paced as ours. So that's why I love it. Really, is the fast pacedness, and like I said, they're just my kind of people. So.
That's cool. Okay. So obviously a bunch of people will, I kind of are in my network or might listen to this everywhere from, owners or executives at logistics companies to maybe somebody who's still new in the industry. Being in the industry for over a decade now, do you have like advice for someone who's like feeling out their career? Like, man, I'm in carrier sales, but I want to be in operations, or I'm in operations, but I want to be in sales, or I'm on the technology side, but I want to get into brokerage, or vice versa. Like, obviously you made a transition from the brokerage side to, a different side of the industry. What advice would you have to somebody who's kind of figuring out their career in transportation?
The best thing about transportation too is that you really can learn all different avenues of it with still staying in one position. So let's say if you are in operations and you're wanting to dip into sales or you're wanting to get on the tech side, you can really, nerd out over each area and learn all aspects of the business. I don't think anybody's will ever say, no, you can't learn about this. And so I think because there's so many different avenues, and usually once people get into logistics, they stay in it because you're able to hop around and go into different niches or go into warehousing or go, there's so many different places in logistics. And so I think if you're still in the point where you're, the beginning stages and you're trying to figure out where you fit in best, it's kind of also stepping back and figuring out what you excel in. Are you good at multitasking? Are you good at are you very organizational? Because that would be great as operations. Are you good at multitasking and kind of convincing people to take this awful load that's, paying nothing? And are you good at that type of thing? Because I think everybody has their own skill set and you don't really know what you're good at until you do it. And so I think just learning as much as you can. And like for me, whenever I got on explore the tech side of things, kind of before I got in it, I've always been kind of tech savvy. And so whenever I got to that point where I was interviewing with my care portal, I kind of knew that for me, I really enjoyed being able to be a part of a tech platform where I can help innovate and take my knowledge in. And so that was something that was important to me, but I love sales. Like I've been in sales forever and I can't imagine not doing it. So I kind of found my niche and I guess that's my advice.
That's cool. No. So let me ask you that real quick before we jump into kind of the cargo fraud and all that. You've always been in sales. Is that something that, out of curiosity, just from the recruiting side of my world, was that something you were always told like your whole life, or did you just kind of land in a sales role and just stick there? Or did you have interest into, like, how did you land in sales specifically?
Interesting. So I think it's always been part of me. Like I remember selling Girl Scout cookies when I was young and I just was like top salesperson, or, whenever you have like the fundraising things from school where you're selling the newspaper and the chocolates and stuff. Like I was always a top dog at my school and I always won the awards and whatever. So I think it's always been just part of it. And I love meeting new people and networking. And so having those two aspects of like, okay, I'm decent at selling at something when I know a product well enough and I believe it in enough, and then I can kind of tell my friends about it and become friends with my customers. that's kind of, I think, how I fell in it. I kind of always knew that was going to be an avenue. Originally, I went to school for marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, marketing and sales are hand in hand. And that's
Yeah.
why I think I've been able to be successful at sales, is because I can market myself or market a product the way that I need to in my sales techniques. So I guess that's kind of my thing, is I always knew I'd be in somewhat of a sales, marketing, something like that, just based on kind of what I was good at. But, whenever I was in high school, everybody's like, oh, I'm going to be a nurse and I'm going to be this and that. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. We'll find out. But I knew that for me, it was like, as long as I can be around new people, as long as I
Yeah.
can have fun, like that's what I wanted. And so sales kind of just fell into that. So
That's awesome. No, that's helpful. It's interesting for me because I like always, you think back to your own story too, and like I remember people my whole life being like, "Man, you should be in like sales of some sort." And like I heard that from like high school on, and most
yeah,
of the men in my family are they would just be introverted, and so I was just like, no, like I'm a
yeah,
used car salesman. Like I'm not a salesperson, and then like I remember taking personality tests through like high school and then like
yeah,
at like pre-employment, and like every one of them was like, you're an extrovert. Like you like people, you need to work with people and I was like, maybe
yeah,
I should try sales. And anyways, long story short, that's been my recruiting and sales, my whole life. So I'm just
yeah.
always curious how other people get into it.
I know. It's funny because sometimes you do meet those salespeople who are introverts, and you're like, and you meet them and you're like, you are not a salesperson. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they kill it. It's like, I think everybody, no matter what your personality type, you can have a role in sales. Like, cause
Yeah.
a lot of introverts sell well to other introverts. I mean, you're really selling to the buyer. So
That's right.
in some respect, like it doesn't really matter who you are, it's how you can adapt to others.
Yeah. Right.
So I know even for me being an extrovert sometimes, and what I've learned throughout my process of being in sales is like you have to kind of learn who your buyer is and kind of almost like mirror their personality in order to
Right.
really close a sale. And that's kind of getting into the whole like me meeting new people and wanting to know all the things and
Yep.
using that type of knowledge in my sales process. So
That's good. What kind of buyer? What are they? An emotional buyer? Are they a numbers buyer? Are they a relationship buyer? There's
yeah.
obviously those different things, and being able to speak to whatever is their need, whatever makes them
Hmm.
feel the most comfortable to say yes, to solve the problem for them. I think
Yeah.
it's helpful. So that's funny. That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Leads us into freight fraud, right? A big problem that you guys are solving in your world. There's a million things going on in the world. Could you give us a quick? I have a couple bullet points that I wrote down that ChatGPT helped me with beforehand that I want to ask you. But I'm curious if you have like hey, here's a state of freight fraud in the U.S. in 2026 starting out here. Kind of
Yeah.
what would you say about it?
So, if you know anything about logistics, basically we've always dealt with straight theft, which is basically where like a driver could have a high value load and be held at gunpoint and have to give up their truck and trailer. Like that's kind of always been a thing from day one. And the way that really since 2020 and everybody getting more digitalized and working from home and things like that, really this has taken a whole new stage for these bad guys to kind of infiltrate our industry. And so really what's kind of going on currently is more of a, what the leaders in the cargo theft stuff will say is strategic theft, which is more of like manipulating on a like a deceptive level. They're either pretending that they're somebody that they're not, or they are, buying like a new MC or buying an MC that looks great or whatever, and then double brokering it and being deceitful to the carrier and kind of redirecting and basically just stealing freight. Because we really have always had double brokering in our industry. But
Right.
at the end of the day, it was like, okay, well, they always made delivery, and I also, now I have two insurances I could go after if something happens. But nowadays it's where this stuff's not making it to delivery. It's just completely disappearing. You don't know where anything is. And so that's where I think it kind of took all of us in the industry by storm, after 2020, was that it was no longer, just like having to double pay somebody. It was complete shipments going missing and you had no idea who you were even talking with or who had the load. And so we've really had to really change the way we do things. And how we, how we vet a carrier and talk to carriers. That's really had to change. And unfortunately, even for carriers, they're getting hit as well. So they've had to really learn how to even talk to brokers and know who they're working with. So it's been a crazy couple of years, but I think like I said in the beginning, like I think we have made a lot of headway with educating, and people do have some processes in place. There is tech out there. Like I know MyCarrierPortal had to come a long ways because we've been in business a lot longer than 2020, and had to come a long ways into making it where we're giving those red flags so that you could see. We're not a black and white industry. We live a lot in the gray, and we do a lot of shady things to try to get a shipment out there because, like I said before, it's a terrible load that nobody ever wants to take, and you're just rolling the dice, seeing what happens. I mean, that in reality, that's what we deal with. And so that's why I think so many times cargo theft will happen. You never think it will happen to you, but you're like, oh, this load's terrible and this guy's going to take it and we'll just see what happens,
Right.
And so that's usually whenever the bad guys come in. So it's knowing what to do with those red flags and how to know, is this guy, just cheaper because he's, probably not the best carrier, or is it where he's actually going to steal my freight?
You mentioned hey, double brokering is something that's been around for a long time. Explain the difference between like double brokering and co-brokering, because I know I've seen that like pop up all over LinkedIn over the years. What's the difference there?
Co-brokering, basically both brokers know what's going on. The main broker who is dealing with the customer or the shipper, they know that this broker is finding another truck for them, and then that the co-broker will actually provide them with the actual truck that's showing up. Because really at the end of the day, and kind of where I think we're going with the cargo theft is we've concentrated so much on like carrier level vetting, but we're really having to get down to driver level vetting in order to really make a stop on this. And so even with co-brokering, they understand who the actual driver is. So whenever you're relaying information to your shipper, like, hey, the driver should be, Bob Smith, and he's in a red truck and it says ABC Trucking on the side, that's actually accurate information and they're loading the right type of truck. So co-brokering is more of like an agreement between both parties. Yes, one guy's skimming some off the top or whatever, but they're handling all the, nitty gritty stuff with the carrier. And then double brokering is more deceitful, and they're saying it's their truck, but it's not. They're hiring another company, and then you don't know who's showing up.
Yep. Cool. Yeah. I know, because there's some people seem to be like, oh, I'm like defending, like, oh, like, hey, co-brokering is okay. Like, it's okay if everybody's in the loop, which seems to be true if it's like all in the up and up, and it's done above board. But the double brokering where it's you haven't let someone else know that someone else is getting involved, that's where it the risk of a load getting stolen or something like that seem to go up.
Yeah. So, and even with the co-brokering, if the person the times when it is not a good case scenario is whenever the person you're co-brokering with does not relay the information on that carrier and who's actually picking it up. That's when you get into like who knows where your shipment's at 4 a.m. whenever, you're getting calls from your customer. And so it's having that relationship and that agreement back and forth of you're going to actually provide me with the accurate information so that if I get a phone call in the middle of the night, I'm not calling you to call somebody and you to call somebody and, this rabbit trail and nobody really knows where the shipment is.
Yep. What are the ABCs that people should follow? I mean, obviously, no trades. You don't have to give us any trade secrets, but like, what are like the basics that people should be doing if you're a freight broker, you're trying to build a book of business. Maybe you're new in the industry, maybe you're not, but like, what are the basics that I need to be doing to make sure that I don't have loads stolen in today's market?
It's funny because I actually just had like a new customer trying to come in, and he's like, I've been in the business for 20 years and I just had a load stolen, and I'd just been looking up FMCSA and I don't even have a contract with carriers. And I'm like, oh my God, how are you operating?
Right.
But I mean, he's been doing it. So I think the biggest thing is really knowing who you're working with. I mean, it's kind of where it all comes down to, that carrier identity. So whether you're verifying with FMCSA, you're calling the actual FMCSA phone number. My biggest thing with that is making sure it's not like a recent contact change or somebody bought that MC, because now you have no idea what's going on with them. Right. But getting into like the identity level of the carrier and then also the driver, you want to know exactly who you're working with. And depending on, your speed of things, that's where tech comes into play and kind of gives you the quickness of like, hey, this is who it is, and being able to see like any spot red flags. But carrier identity is huge, making sure they have the right type of insurance coverage on there. And then anytime you're a part of a community where they can communicate like, hey, I had a bad experience with this carrier or so forth, or hey, I know this guy's actually been running. This isn't just like a guy who decided to pick up a Penske truck and go down the road.
Right.
That type of thing. Anytime you can be part of a community where you're learning, how are others working with this carrier and knowing they're legit is going to be crucial with knowing if this guy's going to steal your freight or not.
That's why that technology, just kind of like that peer-to-peer, the quicker that information can be out there, like, hey, this might be shady or this might be going on. That technology is super helpful in the modern era that we live in. So the numbers that I have read are crazy. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to read you one of them. It said estimated cost in 2025 of freight fraud and cargo theft is estimated at $35 billion. And the average value of stolen shipment is more than doubled. So average value, $336,000 plus by the third quarter. Do those numbers surprise you, or is that like, yeah, that's where we're at?
That's where we're at. I mean, honestly, I think we've been there for a while too. People just weren't reporting things and they were just writing checks behind the scenes. I think it's became such a norm now, and they can kind of see that everybody's getting hit. Like, it's funny on my LinkedIn page, like, I don't know if it's my algorithm because that's what I talk about all the time, but on my LinkedIn page, I swear everyone's talking about it. And I love that because that's the more comfortable we can get with each other and talking about it and sharing stories of like, hey, this is how I got hit. That way you kind of have in the back of your head, hey, this happened to this person. I'm hearing some odd things like they heard. Maybe this guy isn't who I think he is. And so I think really those numbers are probably what they've been. We're just having more people report them. I think we're hit a plateau. I'm hoping we go down now after this point. We'll see. I was waiting for Q4 to come out from CargoNet on kind of where the numbers were at. It's always hard during the holidays, but I'm hoping that, the year we went a little bit better. But I think the biggest thing that we need as an industry, though, is having kind of some government support in this. And I know there's some bills that are coming out. One of them being CORCA, whatever it stands for long term, but it's short for CORCA. And anyways, having like a database that the agencies can look at and see like, hey, this shipment was stolen here and it was like this, and kind of being able to tie all these pieces together. Because right now they're really in one area. They're only seeing freight that's stolen in that area. We're all not talking to each other. And so I think until that happens and until we have stricter penalty on people, I mean, it's
right.
If they're stealing $13 million and they get 3 months in prison, okay. Like that's right. Their reward is way worth the risk. So,
yeah, it's just mind-boggling to me to think about that. There's like whole networks of people who are working together they're like pirates, just stealing stuff. And there's obviously networks of them to sell or do whatever to get rid of those things. And it just blows my mind that here in 2026, like that's even a thing, when I'm like, if you put your time and effort towards like a real job, you could probably do great. And instead you're stealing freight.
It's so crazy. Like, so I know there's like call center, not to like throw a country on the bus or whatever, but there's call centers in like India that, I mean, the culture there is a lot different than in America. And they literally go in, clock in, and that's what they do is see how they can scam in this way or that way. And it's not something that's like it's not weird like it is here. It's very like normal over there. And then even like rail theft, for instance, is more of like a cartel thing. And they actually like have like a whole organized gang, and that's how they bring people over. And, right now with our borders being shut down more, they're actually going back to people that they brought over a couple of years ago, being like, hey, I brought you over and your fee to come over was to steal X amount of freight. Okay, now that, the borders have been shut down, we're having a harder time bringing people over. They're going back into these same people and even kidnapping their family members to have them go back and do more crime for them, because they need those soldiers on the ground, because a lot of them are not in the United States. They're out of the United States, are kind of the big head honchos. And so until we can kind of get a hold on not even just the lower levels, but being able to go up the chain on things, similar to like a drug bust on things, I think it's going to take a minute before we get real results on things.
That's interesting. I was recently at the bulk freight conference in Branson, Missouri, and they had the deputy administrator for the FMCSA, and it was interesting to hear from him because he seemed to be pretty confident about some of the things that they are enforcing now and the momentum that they have. And, he talked about how there are certain states where they're literally, um, one, they're able to enforce things now that they haven't in the past, whether that's non-domiciled CDLs or other things, but they're also like in holding their feet to the fire by basically saying, hey, if you're not, we're going to basically take money and funding from you, which was an interesting thing to see. Whether that plays out positively or not. I'm curious to see how that works, but it seemed from the outside looking in, as someone who's not, feet in it every day, like there was some positive momentum there. So
yeah, I agree. I do think the government's aware of the issues and they are trying to make a difference, especially with this administration. I think they have some good people in place that are really wanting to make a difference. I think my biggest thing with that is, yes, I think there needs to be government help on things, but also like, I think a lot of this, the industry can try to help fix too. Like I'm big on, I don't want, government watching every single thing we do and manipulating everything. But I mean, we need stricter penalties. They need to be able to actually find these guys and talk to each other. And then like FMCSA was literally just like an open book. Like they could go in there and they could send a fax in and change contact information. Like what? If we were at 2025, whatever this, they stopped that finally. A fax? Who in the world is sending a fax over and changing their contact information? Like, come on. So they're finally coming up to speed, I think, technology wise. And I think that will make a big difference. But honestly, when it comes to like, is the government going to be the answer to everything? No, I think that they're very easily always going to be behind the times. They're not going to be innovative enough. And that's why I kind of think the private sector and us as like an industry needs to come together because we can do things a lot faster than, we've been doing things. And like one thing that we all need to put our heads together and figure out is blind shipments. Like why in the world do we still do blind shipments? Can we come up with a better process for this? Because that is literally where the majority of cargo theft is happening is blind shipments. And it's such an acceptable thing in the industry, but we have to have a better way of doing it so that our freight's more protected. I don't have the answer for that yet, but I know it's someone out there knows the things.
Let us know when you do. But it made me think of another thing. What's your take on how AI is impacting fraud, both good and bad, right? Because one article that I was reading was basically like people are using AI photos to like bypass onboarding checks and other things. Yeah, that seems like a scary and like how do you stop stuff like that? But it also seems like AI could be used to make things more efficient too. Do you have an AI take, I guess?
I do. So yes, AI can be good and bad. I think the best part, kind of like we talked about earlier with having technology and it's speeding up things, because really that's where whenever we're in a rush for something, that's whenever we miss steps. So I think AI can help us as far as vetting, and we can train it to be kind of like our compliance manager, checking all these different things, scanning the whole web to see, on the dark web, has this MC been posted and it's been sold, and kind of things like that. Like what's happening on a grander scheme than me just searching, and like we don't have time for that. We're not going to take the time for that, honestly. Like whenever you have X amount of shipments to ship per day, you're not doing that. And so I think AI can help us in that way. But on the other hand, I think these guys they keep coming up with new ways. So as soon as we come up with a way of stopping them, they come up with a different whole scheme. And so it's definitely going to be like a cat and mouse game for a while. And the AI pieces, to me, we need to start educating shippers on that front too, and vetting who's actually showing up at their door. And until we have shippers on board, which I think is getting better, but whenever we have shippers on board checking things, it won't matter if an AI is showing a different face than who shows up, because they're physically seeing people. Luckily, we still have that physical touch in logistics. It's not all an automated Waymo vehicle picking things up yet. We're not at autonomous trucks yet, so I think we still have a chance. We are close, but yeah.
That's cool. So it sounds like in a lot of ways, like you go back to what you mentioned earlier, a lot of it is education and awareness on how to stop this crazy problem that is freight fraud. And there are obviously tools that can help, like MyCarrierPortal and other things out there that are very helpful. Sounds like, though, it's one of those, you can lead a horse to water, can't make them drink. Like you still, as a broker or as a carrier, like you or a logistics company, you have to actually take the steps to make sure that who's hauling your freight, and if that's real or not. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think tech's there to enhance us, just like with AI. AI is there to enhance us. Tech's there to enhance us. I think so many people think that tech is like their crutch and like can do everything for you. I mean, nothing beats that phone call conversation that you have with like a driver, and there's some like weird spidey sense going off, and they're not giving the right information. They're saying it's snowing, but they're picking up in Texas. Like that makes no sense. And just like little things like that like a tech platform's not going to pick up on, and the bad guys know that, and that's why having those two things intertwined is really how you can combat this and stay ahead of everything. And that's where like having the education and the processes, and not only having that now, but staying up to date with it, and listening to podcasts like this, or going to conferences and learning what's happening out there. And now that we're all talking about it, that I think that is how we're going to get ahead of it, is by staying on top of educating and updating processes. So yeah, I definitely think it's a mixture of both. And I mean, me selling the tech that I sell, even, I mean, I think it's crucial to have it, but it's not your holy grail. It's not a silver bullet. Nobody has a silver bullet at this, I promise you. If we did, we wouldn't have the situation we have going on. So
that's cool. Well, that's super helpful. Let's work towards wrapping up here. And I always want to ask a few questions kind of at the wrap up. And this has been really great. One, I'm not a world I live in every single day, so great and educational for me. But for you, I always ask a couple questions similar to every guest as we kind of close out. One of them is looking back on your career. If you had to give advice to your 20-year-old self, could be anything, not just logistics related, but like what advice would you give yourself?
That's a good question. I guess my advice would be to, honestly, I wish I would have done more schooling, but I wish I would have stayed in school longer. I was a young mom, so I didn't get to do all the things, but I wish I would have done a little bit more schooling in learning how to use, mainly not even like a college degree, but more like classes on doing online marketing or doing online, little training courses here and there. And that's something I need to be doing all the time now. But I think that's kind of going back. If I could tell myself anything, is take the little mini classes on this and that, just to stay ahead of everything.
Yeah. Like it's not insignificant to take a course here and there, even if it's not like I'm not going to Harvard. Let's stay up to date on things. Cool. Yeah, absolutely. What about books? Are you? Is there a book that's been impactful on your journey at any point in time that you would share with everybody else?
I do have a couple sales books off the top of my head. I can't even name them, but I can get back to you on it. Isn't that terrible? I'm honestly
we'll
the worst.
Post them in the show notes.
Okay, good. I'm honestly the worst reader. So I have to like have the audiobooks and like podcasts is like how I do education and stuff. I have too much ADHD to read, but no, just there's certain sales books that I think really all of the ones that I've been reading, the ones that relate the most to me are ones that it goes into that relationship base and knowing kind of who your buyer is and going back to your roots on that. So, the networking and all that. So those are probably my favorite type of books. I will send you all my top 3 books.
I'll hold you to it. What about a podcast? Do you have like a favorite do you have like a daily or weekly podcast that you're like, that's my podcast, other people need to listen to it?
Yes. Have you ever heard The Diary of the CEO? It's amazing.
I have heard of it. I have not listened to it.
Oh my God. It's so good. They did one on like women's health. That was like, that's how I got into it. It like blew my mind. Then they had another one about, they do a ton of different things, but one of them was talking about how, like nurturing your young children, how that can develop like ADHD and ADD and like, what? And so it's kind of fun to get out of the industry stuff all the time. Cause honestly, I listen to a lot of podcasts in the industry, but it's fun to kind of get out. And then of course, Joe Rogan is like my favorite. I love him. So
awesome. Yeah. Well, if you guys don't know, Danielle's a podcast host as well. Tell Me Everything is the name of it.
Yep.
You're correct. Yeah. So you can look her up and follow her show as well. But yeah, podcast has been super impactful for me as part of why I started mine as well. Was like, one, I love learning about people, people's stories. And I'll share one here as well. Like one that kind of got me into it was, and it's always been around for a long time. It's called the Art of Manliness podcast. And it's kind of all things like manhood and masculinity and like the good and the bad. And there's like ancient history on there. And there's, talk about sports, how to tie a tie, what's a modern day gentleman supposed to look like. It's just really interesting. And so they'll interview people who wrote books, and then it's a lot. It's just really, really well done, and kind of the same for me. Like, it gets me out of the industry stuff every day, and sometimes like into, I don't know, knights of yesteryear, and like I didn't know about knights, but this guy's wrote a book about them, and
yeah, I know. I'm the same way. I like to learn all the different as much as I can. And then there's of course a couple of the logistics ones that I'm like, I love as well. Like Matt Leffler's, the armchair attorney. I love his because I honestly I'm a dummy. And so he educates everything. So like the way he talks about laws and stuff, I'm like, oh, I get it. Where there's no way I would normally get that if it wasn't for him. So
that's super entertaining too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. He's like one of my good friends. I love him. But yeah, there's that's why I got into podcasting too, is I wanted to learn, all the things. I went to Manifest last year and walked around and I'm like, oh, I thought I knew logistics and I don't know nothing about logistics. So I wanted to learn all the things. And so that's why I did Tell Me Everything. And then I do Fraud Girl Fridays too. So every Friday I have a new episode about different cargo theft or fraud measurements, or even just different tech that I find that I think will be impactful for certain types of businesses. And yeah, it's been really fun just to, meet so many people and be able to talk to them.
That's cool. Okay. So if somebody wants to get in contact with Danielle, whether they want to talk about, My Carrier Portal, or they want to talk about your podcast, or I don't know, anything else, podcasting, whatever, how should they get a hold of you?
Best way is via LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, and then find Danielle Spinelli. I'm sure I will be blowing up your LinkedIn feed and you'll be like, wow, I wish I never followed her, but we'll be best friends, I promise. But yeah, message me on there, and I love to set up meetings. I honestly, my schedule is always full because I get to meet great people online. So I love that.
Cool. Very good. Well, Danielle, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Recruiting Stories podcast. If you haven't yet, subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Check us out on LinkedIn. Adrian Chapman and Cover 3 Consulting is our company page. Also check out our website, www.cov3consulting.com. Again, thanks for joining us, and we just simply want to remind you that you can change the world by putting people in a position where they can do the most good, and you do that by recruiting. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next time.